It was late October when I woke up to one of my best friends, Connor, hitting me up asking if I was down to come to his house later. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was in high school at the time, so I spent most of my weekends with friends. Connor's parents were out of town for the weekend, and he was home alone with one of his older sisters, whom I'll just call Chantel. She was supposedly watching him the entire weekend. With that information, I knew he was just asking me to come over and party. Again, I didn't have any work responsibilities to worry about at the time, so I agreed to the idea and headed over to his house. When I got to his house, we played some Call of Duty on his family room's couch for a few hours, talking about school, sports, girls, and whatever else we cared about at the time. Eventually, he brought up the idea of going to a Halloween party in his neighborhood that a bunch of people from our high school were going to. At first, I was a bit hesitant of the idea, but after some convincing, I was down to go. I'm not introverted or anything, I just wasn't feeling like partying that night, but Connor was dying to go, so trying to be a good friend, I agreed to go. I asked him about getting some kind of costume, and he had 2 security staff shirts that we could just throw on and use as the bare minimum of a Halloween costume. We continued to play on Xbox for a few more hours until 10:30 rolled around. Connor ran upstairs to Chantel's room, telling her we were going as if she cared. Then we threw on our shirts and headed out. After a quick 5-minute walk, we pulled up to a Halloween decorated house where we could hear the music blaring from inside. We walked past the decorations and through the door where we were slammed with the loud music we heard outside. The place was packed with maybe 70 other high school kids raving and just talking in groups throughout the house. It was your average high school party. A few minutes later, I'd already lost Connor as I was pulled aside by Lino, one of my baseball teammates who I'd hardly seen at all that year. He sat me down on a couch in a circle with some of my other friends and teammates. We continued to talk for a couple hours, laughing at dumb memories brought up in conversation and partaking in activities that normally go down at parties. At this point in the night, I was feeling tired and completely out of it. I knew it was time for me to go home and get some rest for the night. I looked through the party for Connor, where he was flirting with a girl in the corner of the kitchen. As I accidentally interrupted his conversation, I asked him if it was cool for me to go back to his house and sleep. He agreed and said he was going to stay for a little longer, but the girl he was talking to asked if I could go get some drinks from the basement. I agreed to do so after realizing I completely interrupted their deep conversation. It was the least I could do. It didn't take me long to find the basement, as I opened the door and headed down the dimly lit stairs. I stumbled down the last few steps and fell into the fridge. As I opened it, I was greeted by a man's voice behind me, who tried quietly saying boo. I jumped and threw my hands up, facing the direction I heard the voice from. There was a tall, 35-year-old looking man wearing a black cloak costume and standing behind me with a grin on his face, making a surprise gesture with his hands. "What the hell was that for?" I yelled, with a clear slur in my speech. The guy laughed and introduced himself as the party host's cousin. I was so out of it, I didn't even question why he was in a dark basement by himself, and there was a massive party going on upstairs with loud music. The guy awkwardly tried making conversation, but I told him I needed to get my friend his drink and leave the party. I'm honestly pretty open and chatty to strangers when I'm out of it like that, but even at that moment, I didn't like his vibe, and I tried everything I could to get away. He blurted, "Nice meeting you," as I turned around, walking up the creaking stairs. I told my friend goodbye and left the party. The lights and Halloween decorations on each house in the neighborhood lit up the street as I walked back to Connor's house. It didn't really matter though, because the walk was literally 5 minutes at most. I reflected on the weird exchange I had with that man in the basement as I walked, and I couldn't shake the odd vibes he gave off. The more I thought about it, the weirder it became in my head. I eventually got to Connor's house. It was completely dark, and Chantel's car was gone from the driveway, meaning I was home alone. I walked into the dark, eerie house and didn't bother turning on some lights, just headed straight to the basement to sleep. I walked down there and passed out on the couch. I lay like a baby for maybe 15 minutes until I heard a crashing noise upstairs. It woke me right up. I tried listening for anything else, but I heard nothing. I thought I was hearing things, then tried getting back to sleep. I don't know how much time passed from when I first heard the crash, but I could hear the floorboards above me creaking like someone was walking on them. I thought it was Connor or Chantel, but it sounded way too heavy to be either of them. I pulled out my phone and texted Connor, asking if he was home yet. I stared at the ceiling, trying to listen. The door to the basement opened. I could hear a person walk down the staircase. I peeked around the bend of the room to see the stair opening. I saw the man I saw earlier at the party, standing right there, quietly, illuminated by the stair light. I tried not to make any noise, praying that the man would just walk away. A few moments passed by before he randomly turned and quietly walked out of the basement, closing the door. I picked up my phone and dialed 911. I explained the situation to them, gave them everything they needed, and I waited patiently in the basement for them to show up. I tried opening the windows down there, but they were all sealed shut. I had no escape through the basement door that the man was standing by earlier. The cops eventually came, and they arrested the man because he was still there. He was found hiding underneath Chantel's bed. She had gotten home and was getting ready for bed, and was moments from getting into the bed when she heard the cops knocking on the front door downstairs. I have no idea what his intention was, but clearly he followed me home. The whole encounter has really confused me. I'm just glad things played out the way they did. Oddly enough, the cops were able to review neighboring houses' cameras, and they saw the man following me home. But then he lost me after taking the corner into the cul-de-sac. He ended up lurking on Chantel, watching her get out of her car and walk into the house. Then he snuck around to the backyard and broke in through the back door. Always be alert of your surroundings.